Hello again, everyone. Welcome to part 4 of our Chapter 21 lecture series for your textbook, Give Me Liberty by Dr. Eric Foner. This section is entitled A Reckoning with Liberty. The focus question for this section is, how did the New Deal recast the meaning of American freedom? The New Deal recast the idea of freedom more broadly by linking it to the expanding power of the national state. FDR mastered a new style of political communication that utilized the technology of the radio with his weekly fireside chats, which became famous throughout the land. These were weekly radio addresses by the president, the first president to regularly and effectively actually communicate directly with the public. And these fireside chats, FDR would talk directly to the American people and let them know the things that the government was doing to alleviate the issues caused by the Depression. And these fireside chats proved very successful and increased FDR's popularity exponentially as millions of Americans tuned in every week to his weekly radio addresses. FDR gave liberalism its modern meaning and linked freedom with economic security. And this new modern definition of liberalism exemplified a government that is large, active, and socially conscious. This is opposed to the classical idea of liberalism from the 19th century, which advocated for smaller government and for individual freedom of choice and conscience. These two definitions of liberalism were drastically apart from each other and would continue to cause conflicts and tensions over the meaning of the term liberalism itself and more broadly the meaning of American freedom. FDR's opponents used the concept of liberty as freedom from a powerful government. His opponents were still more closely adhering to these ideas of classical liberalism. His opponents said that government spending was irresponsible and that government regulations on business and industry suppressed Americans' freedoms. The politics of the election of 1936 reflected class divisions with differing conceptions of freedom. This new modern idea of liberalism as opposed to its classical forebear. The working class generally supported the New Deal. The upper class generally was against the New Deal. Despite these divisions, Roosevelt won a landslide re-election with backing from what was called the New Deal Coalition. And this New Deal Coalition was a fusion of Southern whites, Northern blacks, Protestant farmers, urban Catholics and Jews, industrial workers, and middle-class homeowners who all allied together under their support for Roosevelt and his New Deal policies. During FDR's second term, he made a serious political miscalculation with his court-packing scandal. During his first term, one of the biggest challenges that Roosevelt faced with his New Deal initiatives was the pushback from that conservative Supreme Court that declared many of his policies unconstitutional. Faced with this conservative Supreme Court unwilling to support his programs, FDR threatened to pack the court with liberal Democratic justices. And essentially what this meant was that FDR would add new seats to the court, therefore making the court a much bigger institution. And by putting more liberal Democratic justices onto the court, then that would help ensure that the court would support his policy initiatives. This proposal backfired, as many saw this as an overreach of executive authority, which would undermine the independence of the Supreme Court. However, it did propel a new willingness by the court to accept many of the New Deal proposals that came out of FDR's second term. Around 1937, the momentum of the Second New Deal slowed thanks to an economic downturn in that year, which caused a decrease in overall investment and an increase once again in unemployment. Around this time, or shortly before in 1936, an economist by the name of John Maynard Keynes developed a new idea that became known as Keynesian Economics, and this was adopted by FDR. And essentially what Keynesian economics meant was that large-scale government spending, even in a deficit situation, was necessary to sustain purchasing power and stimulate economic activity during downturns. As a result of this new economic idea promoted by Keynes and adopted by FDR, FDR asked for new rounds of government spending, particularly on work relief and farm aid. And more broadly, this idea of Keynesian economics, of deficit spending during economic downturns, became a new foundation for American economic policy for the remainder of the 20th century and into the 21st century. And that concludes part 4 of our Chapter 21 lecture series. As always, study hard, and I'll see you soon.